Democratic Congresswoman Veronica Escobar of El Paso, thank you so much and welcome to Ion Politics.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. So, you've seen the construction going on at Big Bend National Park, and I wanted to get your reaction to that.
It is such a tragedy, honestly, to see such a beautiful national treasure being bulldozed, literally bulldozed. And what is happening is the Trump administration believes it can do absolutely anything that it wants to in the name of border security. And that is not the case. That is not what Congress intended. And it shows an extreme disrespect for the communities impacted.
Now, since you've seen the construction, have you had a chance to reach out to U.S. Customs and Border Protection or DHS? And if so, what have they told you?
I did some extensive work in advance of the bulldozing, trying to prevent it, trying to reason with the folks in charge, also bringing an amendment forward during our appropriations process to essentially limit the ability of DHS to do this in Big Bend, but also an impact here in my region on Mount Cristo Rey, a sacred site owned by the Catholic Diocese. But I could not get any Republicans to support my amendment. I could not get any Republicans to help avert this disaster. And so this is something that is happening with the full blessing and support of the Republicans who are in charge in Congress.
And did they give you any indication of why they didn't go along with your provision?
I had conversations after my failed amendment with a couple of Republicans who I had hoped, Texas Republicans, who I had hoped would support my amendment. And their view is basically, oh, it'll never happen. The administration really isn't going to go through with this, which obviously, as we can see, is not the case at all. I will tell you, there are other Republicans in Texas who can stop this. Governor Greg Abbott has long challenged the federal government when it comes to Texas sovereignty. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, who is now running for U.S. Senate, he has the power right now to stop it, to sue the federal government. But we see Republicans at every level of government simply acquiescing to whatever Donald Trump wants.
And is this just on the national park, on the federal property, or is this also taking place on in the state park and state areas?
I am not absolutely certain exactly what the plan is in terms of where the bulldozing will ultimately happen. We have gotten shifting answers and really not a whole lot of specific information. So, in terms of jurisdiction, it's still a little bit unclear. I will tell you here in my region, the property that is being bulldozed, that is right now in litigation, belongs to the Catholic Diocese of the city of Las Cruces, New Mexico. So, regardless of jurisdiction, the federal government literally, quite literally, is bulldozing over sacred and important property in the state of Texas and New Mexico.
And that's private property of the church, the
Correct.
diocese.
Correct.
And I mean, here's what CBP told me. They said the agency is not constructing a 30-foot wall. It's constructing 200 miles of patrol roads along with detection technology and 17 miles of non-contiguous areas of vehicle barriers. What's your reaction to that?
Big Bend is a natural barrier. There is absolutely no need for any of this. In fact, CBP has pretty sophisticated technology available that would not require this kind of destruction. And we know when natural treasures are destroyed, they can't be rebuilt. They are built by Mother Nature over hundreds of years. And the destruction, I really do wish the administration would collaborate with local governments, with local communities. Every community along the US Mexico border wants border security. But we also, at the same time, know there are different ways to secure the border, and bulldozing through national treasures is not necessary, and it's incredibly harmful and permanent.
What was your reaction to Senator Cornyn's letter to the DHS secretary earlier this week, asking them to meet with local communities before there is further construction?
It is unfortunately too little, too late. And at this point, I mean, I will tell you, I'm glad he's engaging. I wish Greg Abbott would engage. I wish Ken Paxton would engage. But this is no longer a point for conversations. There needs to be a cease and desist letter that is sent by the senator. There needs to be a cease and desist letter sent by Attorney General Ken Paxton if they truly want to slow this down and if they truly want community consultation. That consultation should have happened months ago. At this point, both the Senator Cornyn, and Ken Paxton, who is running to replace him, they have tremendous power. They have tremendous authority. They need to step in and stop this. Or they're either on the side of Texans or they are, again, blindly offering blind allegiance to Donald Trump.
And you're saying even if it is on federal property, the state needs to challenge this in court.
Absolutely. We have seen Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott challenge prior administrations. Usually it's Democratic administrations when they don't agree with a federal plan. They can and should do this, and they should defend Texas sovereignty and Texas national treasures.
And let me ask you about another issue that is certainly gaining a lot of attention right now, and that's data centers. And where are you on this issue? Because we've seen there's been a lot of pushback, particularly in rural areas. Governor Abbott has responded by requiring a comprehensive audit for all these data centers that developers that want to develop data centers going forward. What's your thought on all this?
Once again, Greg Abbott and other Republicans, this is too little, too late. These are the folks who basically swung the doors open and offered invitations to data centers to very surreptitiously come into communities and rapidly expand. I will tell you, in El Paso, we already have 4 data centers in our region. There's one in southern New Mexico. There's a Meta data center that is under construction right now. The United States Army is planning on building one in Fort Bliss, and there's another one in the unincorporated area in the far east side of El Paso County. None of these have engaged in a thorough community conversation. The Meta data center has been the worst. They refuse to engage with the community. They have reneged on many of the promises that they've made, and the environmental impacts are pretty profound. The Meta data center alone is going to be pumping pollution into the air, really deeply damaging our air quality because they are going to be using gas-powered turbines to generate the electricity that they need. And that data center alone needs twice as much electricity as the entire community of El Paso, or the equivalent of all of the electricity needed and used by the entire community of El Paso.
Are
There,
they supplying their own electricity? Are they building a plant that will supply it and not rely on, the grid? I know that's not on the ERCOT grid out there, right?
correct. El Paso Electric is on a different grid. And what the Meta data center is doing is it's collaborating with El Paso Electric. And El Paso Electric will be supplying all of the electricity. In about 5 years or so, that could potentially impact ratepayers in El Paso who are already facing skyrocketing utility bills. So Governor Abbott's order, even though I consider it too little too late, it doesn't even impact El Paso. We need leaders who will stand up and protect communities. I am doing everything I can as a member of Congress. I also, in the appropriations process, offered a number of amendments, all of which were rejected by Republicans.
And this project has already gotten the green light, right?
Correct. It's under construction. And there is really no way for local governments to hold Meta accountable. They've reneged on a number of the commitments that they made. None of these commitments were captured in writing, unfortunately, much to the dismay of our community. But the federal government and the state government have the power to do more. We have the power to protect communities, protect our water, protect our air, protect our ratepayers. But so far, Republicans have failed and are unwilling to work with us to do this.
And I know it was just recently, either late last month or earlier this month, President Trump announced there were voluntary agreements from big data center developers about not, pushing the costs onto ratepayers. Are you aware if Meta has agreed to that in this project?
I think it's really important for Americans to understand these voluntary agreements are a fig leaf. They are a way for the administration and for other Republicans to pretend like they're being responsive to the community outcry and community concerns, but they have no teeth. Even if there is some sort of gentleman's agreement between the president and big tech, there's nothing in writing to hold their feet to the fire. We need laws, we need regulations, we need guardrails, we need protections. That is the real work, the real legislating that can and should happen when Republicans decide to join Democrats in protecting Americans.
And just last question on this topic. What would you like to see as far as, I know there have been some Democratic lawmakers have called on Governor Abbott to place a moratorium. Some would argue the pause that he's put in place is kind of a moratorium, but others say there needs to be a special legislative session. Where are you on that?
Absolutely. We've seen Governor Abbott enact and begin special legislative sessions over things like bathrooms. This is far more consequential to the day-to-day lives and the quality of life of Texans than bathrooms are. And he can and should call a special session. First and foremost. Number two, he should eradicate all incentives that have been provided to big tech. Big tech, these billionaires that run big tech do not need the financial incentive packages from communities like mine. And lastly, I would very much like to see not only counties get zoning authority, because right now in Texas, counties are completely vulnerable because they do not have the power to enact zoning laws. The legislature can give them that and should give them that in order to protect county and rural residents. And then that will give local governments the power to regulate and protect their citizens.
And I did have one other topic I wanted to ask you about, and that was just on the Iran war. How do you think it's going, and what would you like to see happen?
The war needs to end immediately. We never should have entered into this war in the first place. We've lost 18 service members so far. There are hundreds of other service members who've been injured, including service members who have received traumatic brain injuries. Traumatic brain injuries are devastating on individuals and create a lifetime of challenges. We've also seen what's happening to sailors in the Middle East deployed who are jumping off of their ships out of desperation because of the conditions they're living under. There have been no winners in this war except for Iran. Iran now has control of the Strait of Hormuz. The United States has demonstrated incredible weakness in this moment. And it's not just our service members who are suffering and their families, but the American public is paying higher costs as a result of this terrible, terrible war. It needs to end now.
And the president has said that he got into it because he wanted to keep Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon. How important is that? And if this wasn't the right way to go about it, what is?
The president should never have ripped up the JCPOA, the agreement that President Obama and several other countries entered into with Iran, which not just slowed down what Iran was doing, but allowed inspectors to go into their facilities to create transparency and accountability. We would not be in this place had it not been for that absolutely catastrophic decision by Donald Trump. We have to work together with other nations, bring other nations together in order to carve out a new agreement with Iran. The idea that the president can send two real estate guys to Iran to negotiate a deal and we can somehow do this all on our own, it's delusional. And at this point, this deep into this catastrophic war, the president needs to convene thinkers from both sides of the aisle so that we can carve out a plan to get out of this catastrophe. But the go it alone, the arrogance, not just of the president, but by his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth, frankly, should not have the job he has now. It shouldn't have ever gotten it, but certainly the president should consider firing him as well.
Because of the execution?
That's right. And it doesn't appear that the president is getting all of the information that he needs in order to understand just how catastrophic this is. That's what we've heard in Washington, D.C. over and over again. And if he doesn't have truth tellers around him to paint the picture of reality for him, we are in far more deeply than I think any of us even understand.
Well, we will leave it there. Democratic Congresswoman Veronica Escobar of El Paso, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.